So I guess today's topic is about how NFTs will infiltrate DeFi. And over here, I think we have including myself, hopefully, 3 people who are pretty familiar with this topic, and we're pretty excited to just chat and share about what our thoughts are around the space. Maybe what we can do is start with an intro from each person up here, and yeah, we can get going. I will try to moderate a little bit and also share some of my opinions over the next couple of minutes as well. So yeah, how about Gabe? You want to get going?
Cool, thanks Spencer. Hey everyone, I'm Gabe. I'm the co-founder of Arcade.XYZ. We are an NFT lending DeFi platform. So it's a non-custodial, permissionless platform built on Ethereum. We allow NFT holders to get liquidity on their high-value NFTs. To date, we've done about 80 million in loans through the protocol. So it's loans against assets like CryptoPunks and Bored Apes. Those NFTs that have some amount of liquidity, the lenders will take risk on to earn interest or pick up on a default. I've been in the space for about 6 years now. Before crypto, I was in pawn shops. So I lent basically on physical NFTs, Rolexes and diamonds and purses, and now basically have a metaverse pawn shop.
Over to you, sir.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I guess we have a hard job of being after lunch today, so hopefully everybody got their coffee and you're not too sleepy. I guess we'll try to be entertaining. Francesco here. I work at Unchain AI. We're a 4.5-year-old Web3 security company based out of San Francisco. We focus on security and risk management for crypto. Specifically, we have like a suite of products and services that tackle anti-money laundering, tackle transaction monitoring, tackle like security around smart contracts, and etc. We kind of like sit in between private and public sector. We work with both, from native crypto companies to financial institutions to regulators and law enforcement. We kind of like sit in between all those different like players. I ran the product team here at Unchain, and my background is in applied AI. I was doing research on autonomous driving prior to Unchain. And this is my 3rd or 4th NFT.NYC, I believe. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Yeah, I'll do an intro as well. I'm Spencer, the co-founder and CEO of Collection.XYZ. I've been personally in the crypto space for about 6 years. Started out building crypto wallets like Kobo, and I used to run CoinMarketCap, navigated acquisition with Binance, and I worked on product at Coinbase, focused on derivatives, DEX, as well as Coinbase Wallet. So spent a fair bit of time thinking about how do we essentially make things just more accessible for the next billion users in the crypto industry. And I think my team and I, we started Collection.XYZ as an NFT DEX to be able to allow users to automatically buy and sell NFTs when they set up these liquidity pools. And what we've definitely observed over the past, couple of months is the changing market structure of the space and how so much interesting, exciting DeFi primitives can be applied to the NFT ecosystem as well. Yeah, that's a bit about me.
And we got Anthony.
Now we got Anthony.
Hey guys, how you doing? One of the co-founders of Pastel Network. Pastel is a app-specific blockchain. It's a layer 1 focused on really data storage, authentication, and permanence for the Web3 ecosystem. Some of our use cases have to do with NFT technology across digital art, financial applications, regulatory applications, etc. So yeah, looking forward to chatting more.
All right. Since we're talking about NFTs infiltrating DeFi, let's maybe start by talking about some numbers and high-level data around the space. I think Gabe kind of mentioned earlier about the incredible traction they have received. Maybe like we can start with Gabe, share with us a little bit about what you're seeing, what is some of the exciting numbers in the space.
Yeah, for sure. So I think NFTs are already infiltrating DeFi in a pretty big way. I think the latest numbers, there's like 15 billion of value tied up in NFTs today. Of that, I think 70% are PFPs. So it's monkey pictures basically right now. And as an NFT lending protocol, we make loans against monkey pictures that are online. So it's the numbers are big, but it looks kind of silly today. But I think it's a really new market, and it's just what it looks like today. I think as NFTs gobble up more value, and more value goes on chain locked up into NFTs, lending against those assets will also scale in a big way. So yeah, today it looks like Monkey Pictures, it's about 15 billion market size. Lending, I think we just crossed $1 billion in loans against NFTs. So it's now $1 billion industry, even though it's very small. I think the active participants in NFT lending, which is where I sit, is about 7,000 wallets. So it's really small, but there's so much value tied up in these assets that people need liquidity, and it looks a lot like art finance almost. So people need liquidity for capital efficiency, for hedging, for levering up, speculation, and that's what it kind of looks like today.
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, I can share a bit of information. I don't have the numbers of like trading volume in this space off the top of my head, but I think what we've seen over the past couple of months is sort of the resurgence of just so many interesting marketplace products. You have on the order book side of things, products like OpenSea, and they recently launched the OpenSea Pro side of things, and Blur, of course. And we've also seen on the NFT finance space just so much more innovation, whether it's AMMs like ourselves, Caviar, SudoSwap, and so on, or on the lending side, of course, as Gabe kind of mentioned. And just overall TVL, I think, in the space for AMMs has been fairly healthy and growing. And of course, if you look at centralized order book marketplaces like Blur and so on, there's also a lot of liquidity being, locked up in terms of the bid and asks, deposited in the wallets and so on. It's just really exciting to see. I think one nuance about NFTs is very interesting to me as well, is just how most of the platforms are actually non-custodial, right? It's actually really good onboarding for people to use like MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, and so on to trade. Unlike if you look at fungible tokens, you have to kind of onboard, KYC yourself, and do all that kind of stuff on Coinbase and Binance. So yeah, super excited about where NFT finance is going. Definitely up only.
Yeah, one of the things that on the kind of bringing in the security and compliance perspective that we've seen the most around kind of like the intersection between the NFT world and like the DeFi one is around like on-chain KYC. Kind of like a controversial topic, right? Of course, no one really likes to KYC, but traditional financial markets require it. Now virtual asset service providers also are required to do it. And there's kind of like a gray area on whether certain DeFi protocols should also like do it or not. So I'm not going on that kind of rabbit hole, but we've seen certain companies like starting to offer consumers the possibility of like doing KYC and then kind of like having like a proof of that KYC on chain in the form of like more of a soul-bound tokens rather than just a traditional NFT. And like certain protocols that are a little bit more risk averse and kind of like want to be proactive on that front, starting to look at allowing trades on the smart contract level just for some of those folks that are KYC'd and have that proof on chain. We've seen a couple of protocols starting to do that. And I'm actually curious to get your perspective, right, as kind of like operators of some of these kind of protocols, what your perspective are, right? Right now it's kind of like a gray area in terms of regulation, but would love to hear what you guys think around that. I still have mixed feelings, right? But
yeah, I think we're starting to see DeFi protocols like Aave and Yearn that are just purely permissionless and don't have KYC, but they're starting to create these permission pools also. And I think that's what institutions need to come in. They need to interact with KYC pools. It can't just be a non-KYC capital that they're trading with. I think it's important to note that there's protocols that use KYT, which is know your transaction. And these services like Chainalysis and Elliptic basically scrub wallets that connect to the DeFi apps, and if they've been through illicit activity or mixers, then we block the wallet from using the dApp. So there is some amount of protection going on the platforms, but I think pure KYC is it's still an ongoing issue.
Yeah, my perspective on this, I suppose, is that this might be, I guess, against just like a more controversial opinion, but I think KYC and a lot of these things should happen at the essentially intersection of fiat as well as crypto. And the moment you onboard it into the space, it should be open and permissionless and just easy for you to use. So I would actually hope that we do not KYC non-custodial transactions, and I think that just doesn't make sense to me, at least, right? And I do hope that like if institutions want to come into the DeFi space, that they try to get more comfortable, and we can build the infrastructure to make them more comfortable around essentially this open and permissionless ecosystem that we are building on. And I do hope that in the US and around the world, this is where we are going in the long term, as compared to creating these walled gardens where only certain US citizens or whatsoever can access.
I think you touched on a good point, Gabe, right? There's that KYT, KYW, know your wallet kind of component. We're actually working with one company that is exactly like doing that. We provide on our end kind of like the risk scores around wallets, that KYT, KYW kind of like information, and then this company's kind of issues like a passport on chain that a user can go and use. Like they don't ask any sort of kind of like document checks or traditional KYC. It's mainly, hey, have you interacted with a sanctioned individual? Were you involved in a hack or a scam? Something along those lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing we've been really looking at too, especially as there's been a tremendous amount of progress and traction with various roll-ups, various scaling solutions like L2s, comes at sort of KYC AML disparity between L1s and L2s. Whereas at the L1 level, if you're brokering a transaction and let's say it doesn't necessarily meet some sort of compliance standard, it actually comes down to the individual node operator, not the network itself, presuming that it's sufficiently decentralized. Whereas if you look like at a Polygon right now, which for the most part is a AWS type EVM, right? And at some point in the future, they will be sufficiently decentralized. But in the meantime, a lot of projects have been weary of gaining traction and developing entire ecosystems within the Polygon network itself, just given that lack of regulatory guidance. Whereas the entire network becomes liable of a specific transaction, of a specific infringement or violation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the near term. But I think this year and next, there's supposed to be a lot of significant progress in the scaling world.
I guess kind of to introduce a new topic. So I've been personally talking to a lot of like collection founders, a lot of community members, who run these amazing NFT projects, right? From the Azuki community to the Pudgy Penguins community, DeGods, and so on and so forth. I think one thing I've been always hearing is how kind of scary the DeFi and financialization of NFTs can be, right? Because it feels like it's like scary, like TradFi or Wall Street kind of banking ecosystem that now they have to understand. So I guess for the panelists over here, I'd love to just hear everyone's perspectives on, what is your interactions with like projects, NFT founders and so on. How do we help them, I guess, if any of them are in the room today, to better understand DeFi and NFT finance?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think NFTs and DeFi are a cross section of a lot of different sectors. So it's NFTs, it's crypto, it's finance, it's tech, it's economics. And so that can be scary. It's a lot of different domains. So when we talk about NFT financialization, I think tokens by nature are more speculative, and there's more liquidity, and it just garners more trading activity, and that's just kind of the nature of tokens and Web3. So I think it's a lot about education. I mean, the space is so small, so it has to be a lot of education about all these different domains and the security that goes with that. But yeah, I think for the first time ever, creators are now thinking like the economics of what they release and things like that. So they're having different conversations because they are NFTs. And it's a completely new paradigm. It's NFTs that are capturing like this creative IP that otherwise you wouldn't be able to capture without NFTs. And so that brings into a lot of different domains. Yeah.
Any specific projects or examples that you can think of that, maybe is one example that is like pretty cool of how they've embraced NFT finance or DeFi?
A specific project, I mean, we've on our marketplace, we've worked with probably 100 different collections. Over 10,000 individual NFTs have been through the protocol in loans. So we're seeing loans against Pudgy Penguins, against CryptoPunks, against even Rolex watches, real-world assets that are being tokenized through various companies. Yeah, specific collections, I think they're all sort of embracing the finance aspect of it now, because having the liquidity there is kind of an important piece, like the secondary liquidity. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think on my end, I've seen just some projects, like for example, Pudgy Penguins, Goblin Town. A lot of these collections actually work with sort of like third-party providers to build out these like unique community-based marketplaces. They've not yet embraced, I guess, the lending side of things as much, but I think they would honestly, hypothetically, be very open to maybe experience like the buy now, pay later experiences. Maybe, for example, to help the community to buy, the NFTs, from their ecosystem, and maybe against a loan of some collateral that they may have in their wallets. I think that would be super interesting to see. I do hope that these kind of features will be enabled, even though maybe they have not been so far. And I think to Gabe, your point earlier about like, being more conscious of liquidity provision, how the books are, I think that's something that is like almost like a really weird skill set that many crypto founders or NFT founders need to have to understand, I guess, how, essentially the community is, right? Because this is not a product that you just sell and that's it, right? People have some expectations of it, whether it's utility, whether it's whatsoever, and you just really want to understand that better. Yeah, but I'd love to hear what your perspectives are.
Kind of back to your initial point of it being somewhat scary. It's only scary because it's new. What I think people really need to get a grasp of and fundamentally understand is that this sort of intersection is predicated around accessibility, transparency, and really just being able to do certain things in the market that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to, in TradFi, right? Where you have, let's say a jump trading, and they're lending to a single counterparty, a massive counterparty, who's then lending against collateralized basis to, tens of thousands of smaller counterparties, and there's a little bit more opaqueness. Whereas now with platforms like yours, for example, it doesn't necessarily matter the size of the asset, the size of the collateral, the size of the transaction. You're going to find a market, you're going to find the ability to either obtain fractional ownership, establish it as a collateral base, seek liquidity, whether it's 10 satoshis or 100,000 ETH, right? It doesn't necessarily matter. The market's open, the market's transparent. There are going to be ways to pool together various bounds of liquidity and make things far more efficient and practical for anyone in the world to use. Really going back to that root of what this ecosystem was meant to be, and really decentralized finance that opens it up to the world. So it's super exciting, and it's obviously very promising for projects like yourself that are very innovative in the space and on really the forefront of establishing what the future of this ecosystem is going to look like.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good points, but to slightly differ with your initial point here, I think you were mentioning it's just scary because it's new. I think that's not the only thing that makes it scary, right? There's a fundamental kind of like lack of trust still, right, from the general population to the space, which makes sense, right? Makes sense because, just last year there were like $4 billion stolen in hacks, scams, etc., right? And, when all you hear on the headlines is that, right, that does not attract like the mass population to the space. So it's still very, the space is still very mature in terms of like security and everything around that. And I think you were touching earlier around that as well. And when you start kind of like adopting some of those best practices around security, that changes the conversation. It's just, UI and UX for the user is still like a big blocker for this mass adoption for more people to jump in. But to give you some numbers, right? There were $4 billion stolen last year in hacks and scams, and the medium time to detect this kind of hacks was around 7 days, meaning that people figured out that they were compromised 7 days after, on average. And for them to respond to those compromises, it took them like around 30 days. Traditional cybersecurity, that number is like below 5 hours, right? So there is still a lot that needs to be done for people like to have that trust in the space. And the companies that are building, right, still, right now it's a sexier topic, security and compliance, because of these big numbers. But like 2 years ago, it was not, right? And I'm glad that like more people are doing stuff around this space. And you guys maybe can talk about some of the stuff that you're doing there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's one of the things as a builder in the space, if you're building a new NFT finance protocol, like any DeFi protocols, there's just so much like ways that you can screw up. And I think to your point about like security and hacks and stuff, when you're building these protocols, no matter how many audits that you get with smart contract auditors, with economics auditors, with UX researchers, with UX auditors, or whatsoever, you can never be foolproof. And I think these days, I think one interesting trend that I'm observing recently is a lot of times the black hat hackers would essentially attack the protocols, and then 90% of the funds, I guess, will be returned, and they will keep 10%. So it's like almost like a audit cost, I guess, of the protocols. And I know in DeFi Spring, there were a lot of protocols that was launched without audits because people were just rushing to launch things, right? I think we're not seeing that in NFT finance, which is very good. Most of the companies in the space, of course, including ours, we spend a lot of time just really making sure that we make sure that the code is audited, and we go through multiple rounds of iterations. We wouldn't have some maybe contractors who work with other audit firms kind of work with us in-house to make sure that we're following the best practices and so on. I think it's a very, very important topic. And I'd love to, of course, hear from Gabe as well, what his experience has been with security, but these are some of the observations I have. And from our perspective as builders, it's really important that we build good, secure infrastructure for users to build their trust over time.
Yeah, I think security is something we think about every day. I mean, we build code that's holding money. Our protocol probably has 40 million of NFTs that are in escrow right now. So we go through several audits, peer review audits. We have a protocol team that's looking at this stuff all the time. Yeah, I think when people think about depositing their NFTs into a protocol, they need to make sure that they can get it back or that it's going to be safe. So security is ongoing always. There hasn't, knock on wood, there hasn't really been a big hack within NFT finance recently, but there's a lot of NFTs in escrow today. And yeah, it's just kind of an ever-evolving space, and the devs that are in the space working on it, a lot of them have experience working at custodians and other providers. Yeah, so security is something we think about all the time.
Yeah, maybe it's like an open call out as well. If any of you are like security conscious engineers, researchers, poke at our code, right? Many of them are, most of them are open source and stuff, and let us know if there's any issues.
Yeah. And there's bug bounties, programs and stuff like that. But I think you touched on a very good point, Gabe, there, right? That there's money at the protocol level, right? In traditional kind of like Web 2, right? If Facebook gets hacked or Google gets hacked, right? Data is stolen, and then the hacker asks for a ransom. And it's a different kind of thing. In Web3, there's if you get hacked, money is directly stolen, right? So I think it's even more important that this topic in the space.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised how often protocols are ransomed for money. Like, it happens all the time. So when you're building code that holds money, people are going to try and attack you, and so that happens all the time too.
All right, I guess we've made this NFT DeFi thing really scary. So I guess we have maybe 3-4 minutes. So I just wanted to maybe call out some exciting trends that we are seeing, maybe just quickly around the room, just because we have limited time. So I think one thing, just to kickstart that, is that NFTs are visual, experiential stuff, and it makes DeFi less bloody boring, right? DeFi is so boring. I have to read a white paper, figure out formula, and just get shit, I guess, into my head and figure it out. Whereas for NFTs, it just makes things so much more experiential. So I really do hope that NFTs, can, of course, NFT finance is very useful, right, to financialize NFTs, which we are a huge part of. But what I also hope is that, the ethos of NFTs, community building and so on, can also be applied into the broader DeFi ecosystem. And I think that's what I also hope, the infiltration can be at. Right, so in the future, we maybe don't talk about NFTs or DeFi in that sense anymore. We just talk about decentralized finance in its broader term, and NFTs is a part of it. That would be awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a much more human component to NFTs that are more mainstream than traditional crypto. Right now it represents kind of culture and their JPEGs, and people can get behind. I kind of see NFTs today, what they look like as online country clubs, just communities that are able to get together online and have a common purpose, common goal, yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's just much more around, okay, what are some of the big pain points right now in traditional finance or money transmission that can be solved by the technology? That's kind of much more exciting to me. Real estate is a big one, right? The previous panel was around this. If you can, facilitate, make more efficient and faster some of those processes and get access to more people, that's what excites me about the technology.
Yeah, I guess just a final point. The use cases here are clearly unboundless. There's really no limits in terms of what can and can't happen. And to your point, if we get to where we're meant to be, we won't be talking about NFTs. We won't be talking about DeFi. They'll all just be primitives that exist, and we'll interact with them very similarly to how we interact with Web 2 applications. There'll be seamless integrations, seamless use cases, and it's exciting. Still very, very early in the space, and there's a lot of tremendous progress and innovation going on every single day, every minute. This market and industry is growing faster than anything we've seen before. So it'll be exciting to see where we are a few years from now.
Yeah, let me just maybe make one closing shill. Borrow and lend on Arcade, trade and provide liquidity on Collection, secure your stuff with N-Chain, and then talk to Anthony and the team.
Okay, thanks guys.